Momentum is building. Now let's see what the charts actually confirm. This is Bitcoin on Point, where I give you the only news that matters and the cleanest technical analysis to trade the best asset in the world, Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is holding its structure, but the path forward from here probably won't be as clean as we expect. The higher time frames are still intact, but the lower time frames show that there is liquidity that hasn't been fully resolved. So amongst all of this tension is exactly where opportunities tend to form. So before we go deeper into the charts, let's zoom out to our macro data, because this is quietly aligning with what structure is showing. Now, institutions are still positioning. Bitmine provided its latest holdings update for December the 29th, 2025, with $13.2 billion in total crypto assets. Now, in regards to their holdings, they have over 4 million ETH, 193 Bitcoin, and $23 million staked in 8 co-holdings, with a total cash of $1 billion. So this isn't speculative leverage. This is long-term balance sheet positioning led by Tom Lee and Fundstrat. Now, when firms sit on this much ETH, Bitcoin, and cash at the same time, it's pretty evident that they are preparing, not reacting. Now, long-term Bitcoin holders have stopped selling. And if we take a look at this post from Merlin the trader, long-term Bitcoin holders just stopped selling for the first time since July 2025. The last time this happened, momentum followed shortly after. Weak hands trade noise, strong hands set the trend. Wouldn't be shocked to see a relief rally into early 2026. So this doesn't guarantee upside, but it does reduce downside pressure and increases the probability of a relief rally heading into Q1. Now, tokenization keeps on expanding. Let's look at the latest. Tokenized stocks market cap just hit a new all-time high of $1.2 billion. This isn't about altcoin speculation. This is traditional finance moving on-chain, testing settlement efficiency, and expanding real-world asset tokenization. This quietly supports Ethereum infrastructure and the broader digital asset theses. So the macro takeaway here, what we need to actually put together, is the fact that institutions are holding size, long-term Bitcoin holders have stopped distributing since July of 2025, and tokenized assets continue to grow. This doesn't signal panic, it signals positioning ahead of resolution. Now let's bring this context back to the charts. So let's start with the monthly chart, because this is the major anchor. Right? Bitcoin is sustaining its long-term trend line that it's been holding since 2023. And every time Bitcoin rallies or continues to a new all-time high, it either corrects to a major liquidity zone or back down to this very important trend line. And at this moment in time, it is still being respected. So from here, there are two realistic paths. One, Bitcoin holds this trend line as support and starts marching, should I say, towards new all-time highs, respecting the trend line as it goes. Or the second scenario is where we actually sweep below into deeper liquidity pockets before seeing that continuation and expansion. Now, the second path really matters here, because ideal moves rarely play out perfectly, right? But there is still support waiting below in this second scenario from the previous highs of March of 2024, which on this case would sit roughly in the mid 75K region, right? So the key thing to take away here though, right? Listen, hear me out, guys. The key thing to take away is Bitcoin is still respecting the trend line and it's intact, okay? So ignore the noise and focus on the structure. Now, when it comes to Bitcoin's weekly time frame, we have this 100 EMA, this yellow line that's creeping up. And right now, for the last sort of 5 to 6 weeks, Bitcoin has been holding this EMA as support, strong horizontal support. So a broader bullish structure is actually already in place. The combination makes this level even more structurally significant than the last time. Now, if we date back to the last time that Bitcoin actually held this 100 EMA as support, it rallied 292%. So if we are to see a similar scenario here, where Bitcoin actually holds support on these lows and the 100 EMA, a 60% rally to new all-time highs is definitely something that's on the cards and not to be ignored. Now, when it comes to the daily time frame for Bitcoin, we did have this strong level of descending resistance, which was actually created in October. So a few months down the line, Bitcoin really started getting compressed between this level of resistance and a ascending level of support. We got really squeezed into a corner, into an apex, and Bitcoin has finally broken out. And this breakout has come again since October after many failed lower highs. So what this tells us is that sellers are losing control. Breakouts that come after repeated failures tend to matter more, right? Because weak hands have already been shaken out. Let's put it this way. And Bitcoin has been adhering to this ascending support ever since it placed this low of around 80K in November. So again, ignore the noise, focus on the breakout, and let's see how this traction plays out. Now, when it comes to the 4 hour, we need to focus on liquidity. We have a massive 4 hour support / demand zone, which could be a deep liquidity pocket to fill if we fail to sweep the buy side liquidity, right? Because the buy side liquidity has already been taken. We have these multiple points of contact at $90,000, which in our last few videos, we've identified as major resistance levels. So anytime that Bitcoin comes up towards $90,000 in the last couple of weeks, it has rejected or resorted back down to this green ascending trend line for support. So Bitcoin does have a line of defense. If it can come back and hold this green trend line and then look to sweep the buy side liquidity and break through 90K, fantastic. However, the deeper liquidity pockets do wait below on the 4 hour support back down in the 80K territory, which is the lows from roughly around 20th of November. So we have these lows down here, which created this demand pocket. And then we've also got this ascending trend line that's being respected. So there are two lines of defense. First is the green trend line that's been holding on the 4 hour, but failed to hold that. We could sweep below into larger support blocks before seeing the continuation and actually breaking $90,000. So, a sell side liquidity sweep would make a lot of sense. Before Bitcoin continuing higher, this would mean that the ideal play doesn't play out and it would shake again further weak hands, but just on the lower time frames would mark a reset back down to a key level of support. It wouldn't be bearish. It would be structurally healthy, so to speak. So let's look at Ethereum on the daily time frame, because price has already swept liquidity, right? We've actually swept above the highs from the 22nd of December at $3,000, and we've seen a push up to 3.1K. So we are sustaining above that level. We do have the potential to turn the previous wick high from December of $3,000 into support here before seeing a run up into the bearish order block and the price and highs from the previous highs back in December, early December, roughly at 3.3K. So if ETH can hold, after coming up after this demand zone, we ran into resistance, came back and corrected for a higher low. We've broken out. If price can hold the previous high of $3,000, then it's likely that we see a push up to the bearish order block at 3.3K. And at that point, I think it would be wise, once we've seen a nice, decent move, to then again resort back into daily support. So there is a clearly defined demand zone below. And with this sort of situation, patience matters, right? Because if we actually start sweeping below this previous high and can't hold it as support, then there's another story where this daily support zone may come into fruition before initially going for a larger break. So on the daily time frame, ETH has support below roughly at $2,700. If it can hold above 3K, then there is a likely chance we could push into the bearish order block at 3.3K. But failing that, even if that is tapped, there is still this massive daily demand block, waiting below that will act as a critical level of support. So it's all about sustaining above $3,000 and taking liquidity, which might push it higher into the bearish order block. So let's zoom into the 2 hour time frame, because we've seen a clear reaction from supply. What we've initially done is tapped the previous highs from mid-December at 3.1K. So there is two scenarios or paths here. If ETH can come back and hold a previous level of resistance as support, i.e. we had these previous highs from late December of roughly $3,040. If ETH can come back and turn this into support, we could see continuation and actually push above the 2-hour supply at 3.1K. But failing that, the second powerful scenario would be resorting back down to the 2-hour demand zone, roughly in the $2,700 to $2,800 territory. And this coincides with daily support for ETH that's been holding since, again, late November of 2025. So, although the short-term supply zone has been tapped, there is still an opportunity to turn the previous highs into support before continuation, but failing that, there is major demand waiting below. Both scenarios remain constructive, but the difference is simply how liquidity gets resolved, right? Simply put. Now, when we stack all of this together on the monthly and weekly higher timeframes, Bitcoin is defending a trend line that it's been holding ever since 2023. On the daily timeframes, we have a confirmed breakout after lower high formations and many fake outs. And on the 4-hour, it's evident to see that there is still liquidity that is open for ETH. The daily is holding after liquidity sweeps, and the 4-hour is reacting pretty much simply at clear supply. So this isn't a market breakdown. This is a market working through liquidity with a bullish structure. So my final thoughts is, don't chase, just let the structure resolve. This phase isn't about prediction. It's about letting liquidity do the job, right? And confirmation guides entries. So if Bitcoin sweeps lower first, it's fine. If Ethereum pulls back before continuation, it's also fine. Let the market come to you. Now, if you want to support the channel, the links below are there for you. You can trade on the platform we use, get fee discounts and bonuses. It's completely optional, but it really helps the channel grow. So thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next update.